Bonjour. We are going to start our French 2 adventure by looking over something that you learned about in French 1, but it is so important that I think it's useful to look over again to start French 2, and that is nouns and articles and how they work. So, nouns are very important because they're the basis of our language. They are the things that we talk about. A noun is a person, a place, or a thing. So, the main ideas of conversation and writing. And every noun in French, you probably already know this, but just to remind you, every noun in French has a number, meaning it's either just one thing, singular, or it's plural, more than one thing. For example, one apple versus apples. In French, most plurals will have an S on the end, so they'll be easy to see. English plurals are kind of weird, like man versus men. But a number means, is it singular, aka just one, or is it plural, more than one? Nouns in French also have a gender. This is different from English. In English, most nouns don't have a gender. This is a phone. This is a pen. And we don't care about masculine or feminine. That seems odd. In French, everything has a gender. This is masculine. This is feminine, and it's kind of random. At first, it seems hard to get used to. Eventually, you do learn which ones are masculine and which ones are feminine. I did put an example here in English, bull versus cow. We do have some masculine versus feminine things, but not as much as French does. In French, every noun has a gender, from water bottle to desk. Everything has a gender, masculine or feminine. Did you know that some languages have more than two genders? Like if you learn German, masculine, feminine, or neuter are your three gender options. So be grateful it's just two. Here are some nouns that we're going to work with in this lesson. A lot of them have to do with being at a school. Un café, un lycée, un examen, un problème, un bureau, un ordinateur, un tableau, un instrument, un objet. Those are all masculine. You can tell because they have un in front, which we'll see soon is a masculine indefinite article. And then the feminine ones over here start with une. A couple are la just because they sound better that way. We'll talk about une versus la. Une bibliothèque, une librairie, une université, une sorry, une différence, la littérature, la sociologie, une table, la télévision, une chose. Throughout this lesson, I'm going to use color coding. I'll either be using blue and red or blue and pink to kind of visually separate masculine versus feminine. I highly suggest that if you ever write things out by hand or if you want to change the color of your font, to color code your stuff too. It really does help you start to see, okay, cafe is blue, it's masculine. So if you want to do gender roles and color code them, you can. We're also going to use some people in our examples. So here are some personnes: un ami, un petit ami, un élève, un étudiant, un acteur, un chanteur, un professeur, une amie, une petite amie, une élève, une étudiante, une actrice, une chanteuse, une personne. So let's look at these nouns. First of all, every noun, I already said, can be masculine or feminine, singular or plural, which means if I were to write out some nouns, I might have a chart like this. Le café is one masculine café, the café. Les cafés are plural. La bibliothèque is the library, just one. Les bibliothèques, the libraries, plural. Now, in French, it's hard to hear the difference between singular and plural sometimes because those final S's are silent, but you can hear it in the word les. Le café, les cafés, la bibliothèque, les bibliothèques. We're going to talk more about these articles near the end of this video. Can you guess the gender of a noun? Not usually. Some of my students try to come up with rules. Let me go back. Like, oh, if it ends in an E, it's definitely feminine. False, because cafe has an E on the end, and so did, there was one on the previous slide. Let me go back. élève had an E on the end. So that's not a true rule. There are patterns that we'll start to learn over time. We're not going to look at those yet. Right now, your job is to just memorize and practice. The same way that you might learn, musical notes if you're playing an instrument. Or you might learn a certain play if you play a sport and you're learning how to do something. You're just going to learn these as you go. You can guess the gender if it refers to a human. Sometimes that's easy. Not every time. There are exceptions I'll show you, but most of the time, like a boy, that's masculine. Le garçon. Le garçon is a boy. The girl, well, that's feminine. La fille. So I'll use le in front of masculine nouns, la in front of feminine ones, and when it comes to people, it's kind of easier to tell. Here are examples of masculine and feminine people. And sometimes the words are just slightly changed, like you might have an E or a feminine ending on the end. L'acteur, l'actrice. L'ami, l'amie. Le chanteur, la chanteuse. L'étudiant, l'étudiante. Le petit ami, la petite amie. Exceptions. Sometimes there are words that refer to a person and gender does not play into it. For example, un professeur is me, even though I am a lady. I am un professeur because that word is just always masculine for reasons. And then une personne is me. Une personne is a person. But une personne is also Steve, who happens to be une personne because the word personne is always feminine. So there are a couple of exceptions to that whole just look at the gender of a person rule. But for the most part, people, it's a little easier. With the rest of the nouns, you just have to learn them. There you go. The genders of nouns that refer to objects, ideas, you just have to memorize them. And eventually you just know, why do I have this on my desk? You just know that this is feminine, une fourchette. And you just start to learn the genders of different items. Here are a few more examples of masculine items. Le bureau, le lycée, l'examen, l'objet, l'ordinateur are all masculine things. There's no rhyme or reason to this. There's no rules here. La chose, la différence, la librairie, la littérature, la sociologie, those are feminine words just because. And we learn over time that la sociologie sounds better than le sociologie. Any noun that you have, make it plural by putting an S on the end. So l'objet becomes les objets. Notice that the article, aka the little word in front, becomes plural, and the noun itself becomes plural. Here's a feminine example. La télévision becomes les télévisions, and la changes to les. That's the sound difference. La télévision, les télévisions. There are a couple of little special ones. Here's an example. If you have a masculine noun that ends in E, A, U, put an X on the end instead of an S. So the word bureau, aka a desk, becomes les bureaux with a silent X on the end. Le bureau, les bureaux. If you have a noun, most nouns ending in AL, like animal, you'll change it to AUX, animaux, animaux, l'animal, les animaux. One more thing with plurals, if you have a group of mixed gender, if you've got boys and girls, you default to masculine. I guess they just think it's easier that way. So if you have a group of friends here or a group of students, even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4 ladies and 2 guys, they will become les amis, masculine plural, or les étudiants, masculine plural. That's the same for if you had, let's say, a whole class of ladies and 1 guy, then it's a masculine plural group. Okay, so that's gender of nouns and singulars and plurals. Let's wrap up real quick with those little words in front, articles. Every noun in French needs something in front of it. It needs an article. I think of it as like something that grounds it, that holds it down. It either has usually a definite article or an indefinite article. Definite articles, the grammar name sounds weird, but when I think of definite articles, I'm pointing at it and saying, the TV. So definite means the. They correspond to the word the, And the French forms are le, la, L apostrophe, which is pronounced l plus the next word, and les. Le plus a masculine word, la plus a feminine word, L apostrophe if the next word starts with a vowel or vowel sound, les for anything plural, even if it starts with a vowel. Masculine, feminine, vowel, everything les. It depends on what the next word is, what that noun is, and if it begins with a vowel sound or not. So I use le in front of something masculine singular, le tableau, and I use les in front of something masculine plural, les cafés. And all of the time, that le, la, les means the. I use la in front of something feminine, la librairie, and I use les in front of something feminine plural, les télévisions. If I have something that starts with a vowel sound and it's singular, there's just one, I use L apostrophe, l'ami or l'université, for example. And the idea of that is to make the language flow and sound smooth. I don't want to say le ami, la université. That sound is gross and French doesn't like it. So they'll say l'ami, l'université. That doesn't count for plurals because if I had friends or colleges, if I had friends or colleges, I'd say les amis, les universités, and it would flow and be smooth. I'd just pronounce the S better. In English, we don't always say the word the. Nobody says, oh, I love the French. The literature is difficult. Instead, they say, I love French. Literature is difficult. But in French, you need an article to ground your word. J'adore le français. La littérature est difficile. I need something in front. I can't just say, j'adore français. It sounds incomplete to a French person. Lastly, thanks for hanging in there, indefinite articles are indefinite. So you're not saying the table, you're saying a table, some table out there in the universe. Indefinite articles mean a or an, like an apple, or some apples. The French forms are un, masculine singular, une, feminine singular, des for everything plural. We don't care about vowels here. In English, you don't omit this, and in French. So we have un instrument for an instrument, une table for a table versus l'instrument or la table, and the plural forms des instruments, des tables. Notice you don't normally hear the S on des tables, unless the next word starts with a vowel, des instruments. The word c'est you'll use to introduce some things, to say it is, and you'll use ce sont for the plural. So if somebody said, qu'est-ce que c'est? What's that? C'est une librairie. That's a bookstore. It is a bookstore. C'est. Qu'est-ce que c'est? What's that? Ce sont des bureaux. They are offices or desks. That word can mean office or desk. So hopefully that review reminded you of all the things you already knew about nouns and articles, singular, plural, masculine, feminine, all that info that you learned in French 1 that maybe you'd kind of forgotten about since March. We're going to do a little bit of practice with these.